Absolutely, 100%. And then another thing that's really important is that, again, just like in any industry, in any relationship, in anything you do, consistency. You have to be consistent and continue to be true to your values.
Thank you for joining us today. Where are you calling from?
I am right now from my studio in Portugal,
In Portugal. What part of Portugal are you in?
in the northern part.
In the northern part of Portugal. And so I see here that you're based out, or you were based out of Texas in the United States. And why the sudden move to Portugal?
Just living the life, looking for a better quality of life.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that you're
Yeah.
doing good.
Thank you.
We're hopping on today to talk about your industry a little bit, to get some background on what you do, discuss some of your trends and some of the challenges that you're facing. It'll take around 15 to 20 minutes, and we'll go over everything from the services that you provide to your future goals and any challenges that you'll face along the way. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Okay,
Bring it on.
excellent. All right. Well, to start off, all I know is your name. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, what your company does.
Well, my name is Carlos. I am a professional guitar player and have been playing and performing for many years for all kinds of events, primarily three sectors in the industry: the private events, weddings, and corporate events. And so I have, been able to work for lots of different events over the years, providing background music, concerts, things like that, fundraisers. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I do and in the areas in which I have been able to participate.
Excellent. That sounds great. And what type of music do you provide?
Just background instrumental music, just a little bit of everything. It's all actually most of the time it's just instrumental music. There are the occasional concerts, but most of the time it's instrumental background music from various genres. But you know, the type of music that you would hear at a wedding during a reception or at a corporate mixer uh, or at a private reunion in a private residence. So just instrumental background music.
So
My
you're the guy who
instrument is
sets
the
the mood.
guitar. I set the mood. That's
Excellent. And what type of guitar do you have, if you don't mind me asking? I'm a musician myself from time to time.
of course not at all. I play a guitar that was made in Spain, and so it's a flamenco guitar.
Oh,
Um, and so, people see it and sometimes think of it as a classical guitar, which really the differences are very minimal when it comes down to the actual sound. And you'd have to be a connoisseur to really notice the difference between a classical and a flamenco guitar. And so I just happen to like the sound and the way that the instrument is constructed.
okay. And so those flamenco and classical guitars, those are the ones with the nylon strings, right? Not steel strings like you would see on an
That's
electric
correct.
guitar.
That's correct. I play a nylon string only. Gotta keep the nails in good shape. And if I try to play steel string guitars, they would just be ripped. That wouldn't be a good thing.
It would break, and you don't use a pick, I assume, because you got those nails that you can use a
I
fork.
got five picks right here.
There you
They're
go.
built in.
That's great. There you go. Built in. Saves you some money too on losing and buying picks all the time.
That's right.
That's awesome. So you are in the music industry. You provide music for private events, corporate events, weddings are your three main sectors, and you play the flamenco guitar. You do some like Spanish background music for them. That's great. I see on your website that obviously your name is Carlos Sanchez, but you go by Carlos Guitar. Is that the stage name? Is that the company name? Is that what we're
That's the company name, and that's why my website, my email address, everything is under that name, Carlos Guitar.
excellent? I
So
think that keeps things simple enough.
that's right. That was the whole idea whenever I got the domain, to be able to make it easy for people to remember and to find it. And so that was the reason behind it.
I think that that domain helps out so much whenever you're searching for your type of music, because I did a quick search before our call on some musicians in where you're based out of, and you were previously based out of Texas, San Antonio specifically. So when I went in and looked up Spanish guitarist San Antonio, you were one of the first names that popped up, and it's probably really easy for people to see you because you got your name right there, guitarist. You can't get easier than that. Carlos is the musician, guitar is what he does. So,
That's right.
excellent name choice.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, I see online that you have built up a pretty big online presence. You've done, you've been doing this for a little over, was it 20 years, 30 years that you've been doing this now?
Well, by now, it's probably a little bit over 35 years.
35 years. Wow. So you're a bit
Yeah,
of
the
a
gray hair
veteran.
tells the story.
I bet. I bet. That's awesome. So you've been doing this for 35 years and it shows. I was looking on a website called The Knot. It looks like you have a full 5 stars with over 100 reviews on there. And compared to the other musicians in the area, they don't even come close. So what would you say has contributed to that many reviews and that good of a rapport among your clients?
To be honest, I think really what I've done is really taken my business seriously. And what that means is that I put my best foot forward from the very beginning of the process, the initial contact with my clients, through the planning stages prior to them having the event, and then, of course, my follow up with my clients. And one of the goals that I always strive for is to achieve the 5 star review. But that only happens if you really put your best effort throughout the entire process from the very beginning. So, I absolutely feel very blessed to be able to do what I love, and that's what I convey to people. And I truly, whenever I work for any type of client, whether it's a wedding, a corporate entity, or just a private reunion, I make them feel like they're my only client. And I treat them that way. It doesn't matter if it's a small client or a big client. To me, all of them represent somebody who has trusted me to be able to enhance their event. And I guess that mentality is what has allowed me to be able to be able to acquire now a number of reviews that is great because I don't have to, as they say, toot my own horn. I let the reviews speak for themselves, and so. But it's a lot of work. It's taken years to get to this point.
I bet. Well, I think the years paid off with that successful of clientele and reviews across websites like The Knot, The Bash, Wedding Wire, which I assume are all booking agents that you work with and have worked with in the past. And organically, you're showing up as, first page of Google, pretty much at the top there. And you're not even living in Texas anymore, which is even more impressive. That means that your presence has been so profound that it's stand the test of time and location for you. So that is nothing short of impressive. I also see here that you
Thank
have
you.
some awards on the Wedding Wire. You have the Couple Choice Award, Best of Weddings on the Knot, and then some multiple other awards and notable venues that you've participated in. Congratulations on the years of hard work that have led to such an extensive resume here.
Thank you. Well, my wife always told me, unless you bring the awards and the reviews, you're going to sleep with the dog. So I was pretty motivated throughout the whole process.
That's enough to keep anyone motivated. And I think
Yeah,
it paid off. And every day, I bet you're grateful that she pushed you to do that.
that's right.
That's awesome. Well, I see here that it's safe to say you're an industry leader in this space and you've had a pretty long history of doing this, worked with some pretty big clients. You've worked with several hotels and in different cities around Texas, the Marriott, museums, and all that. And what do you think has contributed to having such an extensive and exclusive clientele?
I guess it goes back to the same thing. Unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, in this industry, there is this stigma that has been assigned or affixed to a lot of the musicians, particularly speaking, which is, the musician shows up late, the musician shows up not properly dressed, the musician starts to drink, the musician does not have respect for the customers, the musician does not answer his phone, etc., etc. And when you just really focus on doing the opposite of that, then you break the mold. And I guess the same thing, the same principle, obviously, in my opinion, holds true to any industry. When you're able to address the concerns of a potential client from the very beginning and prove to them that you are the opposite of what they thought you'd be in a positive way, then it's easier for you to position yourself within the industry.
I see. You see movies like The Dirt, the movie about Motley Crue and these other rock bands and musicians, and you see the mess that they leave behind going to different venues, and I bet that's built up a pretty bad taste in people's mouth towards certain musicians, whether it be something like a private musician like yourself or a big band. I hear just in the clients that I've worked with in the past, the venues and such, they say, this musician, like you said, showed up late. They weren't answering their phone. They showed up and they weren't dressed well. And I think your strategy of doing the opposite of what the industry is, it's what separated you and made you that more exclusive option for these clients. Would you say that that's true?
Absolutely, 100%. And then another thing that's really important is that, again, just like in any industry, in any relationship, in anything you do, consistency. You have to be consistent and continue to be true to your values because you can be that great, have that great facade and everything is peachy groovy for, the first couple of years. And then when you feel that you've achieved a certain level of recognition, then a lot of people just kind of sit back, relax, and think they've got it in the bag. But that's not the case. So it's
Yeah.
it's about, it has to do with integrity and with that continue effort to do the best you can, just because that's what you do.
Yeah. No, I understand. I think that, the saying is that at times consistency can kill a business because they're not, moving, they're not evolving. But I think in this case, all these big venues are looking for and these big clients, they're just looking for somebody that can deliver what they want every single time the way that they want it. And, you pair that with, the evolution of your own skills, your talents, and your repertoire, I assume is something that always evolving on top of the
Yeah.
consistency you have over the years is just exactly what these clients are looking for when they're looking to bring you on for these big events. So I think that your strategies proved itself, and I wish more musicians would, follow in your footsteps and bring in that consistency and professionalism. I also like that you are so personal with your clients. Everything from start to end is seems to be pretty personal, and I'd like to dive into that if that's all right with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so walk me through what an average client experience is. Let's say I'm hosting, we'll make it easy and bring it down to a specific type of event. Let's say I'm getting married and I want to book you for my wedding. How would I go about that from step one to step final step?
In a nutshell, because this could take a while, I could have you here for 2 hours and telling you the details. But pretty much once I make the initial contact, one of the things I always want to find out is what is it that the client is wanting to achieve? What kind of music are you expecting to have during your wedding? What style of music? I find out how many guests they're expecting. And there's a bunch of other factors that you pretty much already know when they contact you, such as where the wedding will take place, things like that, the time of the wedding. But I begin by finding out what it is that they want. And I take the time to listen and find out exactly what their dreams and goals are, if you will, music wise, which is my part of the deal. And then I try my best to meet them. But at the same time, as I go through the process of talking to them about the event and sharing my 2 cents based on my experience on what I think would be good, what would be best, what wouldn't be good, I always try to be very, very transparent about something, whether, couples have asked me to play a specific piece. If I really don't think it's going to sound well on the guitar or that I won't be able to make it sound well, I tell them. If I feel the style of music they're looking for is not something that I can truly deliver, I tell them because I would much rather lose a client and gain a referral for the future than try to pretend that I can do everything and then make a fool of myself, which would in turn generate a bad review. But as I go through this process, a couple would take the time to share with me what their ideal music style is, what if they have a specific piece or not in mind for when they get married during the ceremony. And again, this is a more intricate process, but I'm just kind of skimming over the general idea. And then I of course tell them what they can expect from me. And this is the part where I tell them how I work, how I show up, what I do, what I bring, and I tell them from the beginning how it is that I'm going to be working with them throughout the whole process. Then I do just a couple of simple follow-ups in between the initial contact and the time of the event because I want them to make sure they know I am on top of it and that their event, whether it's a wedding, like in this case of the example you brought up, it's really important to me. So, and I always, of course, make sure they know I'm available because I want them to feel like if they have a change of heart regarding a piece of music or they have a question about the layout or the logistics, they can comfortably and easily reach out to me so I can address that. Then comes the day of the event. And what do I do? What I promised I was going to do, which is what we just discussed. Show up early, be prepared, well dressed, have all my gear ready, do a very professional setup, and then deliver my part of the performance, which is the music. And then at the end, after saying goodbye, and by the way, there's been a number of times, particularly with weddings, where I have not physically gone and said goodbye because the couple is busy with their guests. And so I choose to and I tell them, I'm like the thief in the night. I just, make my way out quietly, but then I will follow up with them to thank them. So that's kind of in a nutshell. Again, it's a lot more intricate than this, but in a nutshell, that's how it works.
Okay, excellent. Well, it sounds like a pretty thorough process. Even in just the quick summary of it, I was able to get a pretty good idea of what you do. So, breaking it down into like a five-step process, you would say that you start off with a sort of discovery where you go over their goals, general info about the event. I assume through one of your portals, you're able to collect information to reach out to you first and foremost with their name, the number of guests they have, the venue space, and anything else they can provide at that moment. And then, like I said, you discover kind of what they're shooting for, what type of music they want, where they want you during the wedding or whatever event is that they're looking for. Then you move on to a stage two, which is your onboarding, where you go in and analyze their wants and needs. You collect all extra info that you would need. You set expectations, which is very important. That's a big one that I know a lot of people wish that more companies did, is kind of say, like, this is what I'm going to provide for you. This is what I need from you so I can fulfill my end. So that
That's right.
is a great step. And then you move on to a follow-up round where leading up to the day of the event, you're open and ready for any questions, any feedback, because this event planning process for some can be rather stressful as they're planning their big day. They have tons of other vendors that they're working with. So being one that they can just reach out to whenever has got to be a big break for them. Then you move on to your final, your delivery, where you go to the event, you provide the service that you had been already talking to them about, set expectations for, and gotten all the information for. You deliver it on the day of, and then you go into one last round of follow up, or you go and check with them. You give them an Irish goodbye as you leave, and then a
That's
follow
right.
up on that night, that day, or the day after. Does that sound like about right?
That's about right.
That's excellent. I think that your two stages of follow-up are what kill a lot of other businesses, specifically in this music space. I would assume is the fact that, you book a musician and then you don't hear from them until the day before the event. And then it's like, I wasn't even sure if you were coming anymore. I gave you my money and,
That's right.
so giving
It's
them
again
that.
going back to what we were saying that the stereotype of the lazy, unprofessional, unkempt musician.
I see. Yeah, I think your added professionalism, it almost reminds me of what a hospitality business would be, like a nice hotel chain. You book a room at a hotel and immediately they send you a follow-up confirmation. Then on the week before your stay, they send you another confirmation asking you if you need anything. Then on a couple of days before, they tell you your room number and they tell you, what amenities you're going to have access to. They send you some promotions, and finally you get there, and then if you're at a nice hotel, the that extra personal touch is what makes you want to go there every single time rather than any of the other places that you book, and then you don't even know if you still have the room by the time you get there, and then you get that surprise that the room's not available anymore. So I think
Yes,
that
that's right.
builds up so much confidence for them, and it really puts you in that hospitality space. I think I had a teacher of mine, a mentor, once say that we're all in the hospitality industry. No matter what business you're in, everybody's in the hospitality industry because that's what people are looking for, is that professionalism
That's
and
right.
hospitality. So excellent. It looks like you have a pretty smooth system going for you now and have been for the past 30 years. So tell me now, with the ever expanding, ever growing, ever changing industry that is the music industry, what would you say is working well for you now? And what would you say has been a little frustrating since this industry has evolved?
Well, what's working? I mean, what I've been doing continues to work. So, I mean, what we just have been discussing, right? What's frustrating? Well, let me think about what's frustrating. Sometimes, things with the economy where people start to cut down on budgets. And of course, entertainment is usually one of the things that people would consider cutting out if the budget is tight. Sometimes the fact that there are like, I want to be clear. I mean, I'm not against or bashing people. Like sometimes DJs who offer to provide music for the entire wedding and for a much cheaper price. Sometimes it's not the same thing, but sometimes they sell it as a convenience for the couples. But that's again, I mean, I guess that's part of the competition that you're always going to be facing. So I'm trying to think what else is, I mean, things are changing now a lot with AI, becoming an intricate part of what we do. But fortunately, I think at least for a number of years, maybe I won't be around when it changes. There will always be people who appreciate the artistry of a musician, live musician. And so, but, things evolve and the way to approach customers is changing. And so, but I think for somebody um, that hasn't started or is just starting and doesn't really understand the business aspect of what this entails, it would be complicated to do. But otherwise, I mean, for now, so far, it continues to work. And just like I mentioned earlier, just continuing to improve in all of the different aspects of what I have already seen and proven to be successful, at least for me.
Excellent. So your system works, and I see that, that's a true statement with with the resume that you've built up online, your presence and that personal touch that you have for all your clients that bring you back time and time again. But I can also see how, I mean, you're absolutely right. When the economy shifts, for better or for worse, one of the first things to go is entertainment. People are going to need to buy their necessities and the rent and the food and the shelter and everything else. Music, sadly, comes last when moments like that happen. So I can see how shifts in the economy can become pretty difficult from time to time. And on top of that, the competitive pricing, because like you said, the standard for some musicians is to provide this subpar service, but what comes with subpar service is subpar pricing, right? Lower pricing, and they can really come in and say, "Hey, like, we'll charge you, X amount less than our competitor, but we're gonna show up late and we're gonna dress bad." And they don't say that to the client, but that's what the client can
Exactly.
expect when they show up. And it's a double-edged sword for them because yes, they booked the client, but they won't get asked to come back. So their price is one on and one off. They're going to bring in one client and that client's going to pay them and they're not going to be able to come back. But with you, if the client makes the smart decision, decides to pay a little extra to bring in a more premium service, they're going to want you back time and time again. But I can still see how that competitive pricing can be a big issue
Yeah,
from time to time.
absolutely. And there's different things, but at the end of the day, generally speaking, people who plan events such as a wedding or a corporate event have already been planning that event for some time and generally have budgeted money for it. So, yeah, I mean, I mentioned the shift in the economy, which can take a toll. I mean, or things like what happened during COVID, which thank God now we are past. And But in general, when you have made a big effort to deliver the best you can, and people have seen it and can attest to that, in this case, via the reviews, which is what we use for everything pretty much. Nowadays, people look at reviews. That can be a great and powerful testimony to people. And generally speaking, people will have a better, easier tendency to realize your value once other people have confirmed that. So, but yeah, I don't know what else to think about right now that would be just kind of frustrating, getting in the way.
Well, I can see how your mindset has allowed you to overcome a lot of what would be frustrations. Some musicians you can talk to that are in this space and you say, "What frustrations do you have?" And I can imagine they would say, "Well, people don't take me seriously, or I'm not getting the bigger clientele." But you don't have that issue because you've already come over those roadblocks of what the industry standard is, and you've gone against the grain, which is what has singled you out, made you a more exclusive model for some of these companies. So I can see how the mindset you have, the system, and your process has made that frustration go away. And so with there being, little frustrations now, what would you say are your next steps? You're no longer necessarily completely based out of Texas. So now what's the next steps for Carlos Guitar in the next, 1 to 5 years?
Well, I mean, when it comes to my presence in the US, is continuing to be able to provide services to some of my existing and past clients through being able to book out some musicians. And the wonderful thing about this process, which I want to repeat, I mean, I want to reiterate for people who are considering entering an industry, whether it's as a musician, a photographer, a caterer, whatever it is the fact that it's going to take some time. And right now we're talking about how I have a small reputation. People know my work. And I say small because obviously it is small. But there were a lot of moments where I had no clients, where I had people wouldn't trust me, they wouldn't book me, where people would doubt whether I'd be able to deliver. And it's just hanging in there through the hard times, but it does take time. Now it's easier to look back and see, okay, you know what, I've climbed that little mountain, now I have a bigger mountain. What's next? Continuing to deliver the same kind of service, which I was mentioning what I just said a minute ago, because now clients that contact me because of the reviews that I have, because of the history, because of the things that I've been able to achieve over the past years, they will have a much greater tendency to trust me to be able to provide entertainment for their event, even if it's not myself, the one that will be performing, because now they trust that I know how to deliver what they're looking for their event. And then the other thing is that I think it's important is now where I'm located. I want to be able to apply the same principles that I applied before, so I can go ahead and grow the same customer base and the same reputation. That's kind of in a nutshell.
Okay, excellent. So in a nutshell, bringing in more of the same and better to the existing clients in the US and then expanding as much as you can over now in Europe. And what would you say? I think, your system in the US has proved itself. Obviously, the market there. You've been working in that market for several years now. But this new market in Europe, I assume, is a little new. It's a little different. So, what would you say is going to be the biggest challenge you're going to have or have had in expanding in that market?
I'll tell you, that's a simple answer. The same challenge that I had to face in the US throughout those initial years, which is patience. And I said in the beginning of our conversation, being consistent. So the same thing here. Patient. Why? Because it's learning a new market, learning a new culture, learning a new approach, and understanding that that is going to take some time. And being consistent so that people, little by little, will see that what you promise is what you deliver. So in a nutshell, it's the same idea. But I said the challenge is the patience, because when you come from having established yourself in a market and you know that your system works, and you land in a different market, the same things may not work immediately. And so that's where you need to realize you got to have the humility to say, no one knows my work here, and I need to be patient and I need to adjust and be like a chameleon so I can blend in with the cultural environment that I'm a part of now.
I can see how that would be a challenge to be patient because you know that the systems that you have worked in the past. And so putting them into a new environment, it's a waiting game at the end of the day. You have to get out there and, there's no quick way to build that much rapport as what you had over here in the US. In an area like Europe now, you have to get out there into the market and find new clients. And I think right now, tell me if I'm wrong, but one of the biggest goals you have is to, obviously to start, you want to get with pretty much any clients that'll bring you on to start building that reputation in that sector. But also the, end goal is to get those bigger contracts again with the more established companies, whether it be hotels or event venues and event planning companies that can bring you in and give you a similar clientele to what you had in the US to be able to grow in that way. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct. So in essence, it's just kind of going back to the same planning stages of the system that I have now in the US. So again, and just tweaking it as you go, learning it. I learned a long time ago by attending seminars that were leadership seminars and self-improvement seminars. One of the main principles you learn is that once you've been able to achieve success at whatever level in whatever industry or endeavor that you carry on, and you've achieved it, you'll be able to replicate that again in the future if you're patient and you're able to adapt. Because generally speaking, the success principles are the same in most of the areas that you may anchor.
I like that. I think that that is a concept that applies, like you said, to every industry. Is the like what I mentioned earlier about how we're all in the hospitality industry is the same concept here. Is that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, as we say here in
That's
Texas,
right.
right? So
That's right.
that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Carlos. Before we hop off here and
My
let you get
pleasure.
back to your day, could you give us one piece of advice for an aspiring musician entering the field for the first time?
What would I say as a final thought for an aspiring musician? I would tell you that even though we are in a world that now offers many more choices for the prospective client, if you really do what you love, or let me rephrase it, if music or whatever it is, in this case, we're talking about a musician, is what you love, just put your whole heart and soul into it and the whole process. And just know that even if there are 10, 20 other musicians offering something similar, there will always be an audience that will choose you just simply because of who you are.
What a great piece of advice. I think a lot of people could take that not just in music, but in life. And so, really
Sure.
appreciate that input.
Of
And so,
course.
Carlos, if we wanted to find you, where can we find you online?
My website, as we talked about, www.carlosguitar.com. Uh, that is my primary source where you can reach me. It's got all my contact information, and I am easy to reach.
Okay, excellent.
So
Thank you again for your time, Carlos. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
thank you so much. Likewise.